Yeah,
Hello, hello.
you're through to Mal, and
Oz, welcome
this is
to the therapy sesh.
another therapy sesh. All right, how you been doing today?
Been decent, been decent. What about yourself?
I'm awesome.
That's good. Glad to hear
Yeah,
that.
thank you. Obviously, I've had a few back problems recently, as you know, so been a little bit slow on the recording, but back
Mm,
in the action, and yeah, feeling great.
that's good. I like how you said you're awesome because, for me, the joke I used to make was awesome has my name, Oz, like in front. So, there you
I
go.
mean, it's spelled differently,
It is
you know.
spelled differently. I know. I knew you'd try to freaking ruin it, but like I said, joke. Awesome, Oz sounds the same. Awesome. There you go. I spell it O-U-S.
I'd
OME
love to hear you introduce yourself like that. Oh, my name is Ors.
because I'm awesome. I mean, I feel it's a bit like very cheeky or corny, but you
You
know,
gotta be. You gotta be. If you're not, who will? You know, if you
yeah,
don't do it for yourself, he'll do it for you.
there you go. All right, let's
Well,
jump right into it. What are we talking
jump
about?
right in. So, I just to start with, I guess I just want to know what are your thoughts on sort of things like karma, for
Karma.
instance. Yeah,
Uh it's I think the first time I heard the context of like what karma was, it scared me a
Mhm.
little bit because like I
Yeah,
saw it as oh, there's just like this God who's like always just, and it's like oh, everything you do to somebody or everything you do to like maybe an animal or whatever, it's surely gonna come back to you. So it was kind of like scary, not in terms of like I'm evil or I'll do evil towards somebody else, but I was just like, what if I accidentally like step on an ant or something, and then I don't know, an elephant steps on me or a giant randomly steps on me. So as a kid, it was kind of scary, but now I see its place in the world, and I think yeah, like some sense of it exists, but I don't know if I completely believe in it. You know?
yeah. Well, I mean, in terms of that, you haven't got to worry about people stepping on you. You know, your name's not Matt.
Yeah, good job. Yeah, no, it wasn't. It's not like I was like people stepping on me. I was just like, an example I'll give you would be when I was in Gambia, I was a kid, and an ant bit me. My grandma was there, and I was really mad because I was just like, I didn't do anything to this ant, and it just bit me, and it hurt, and I wanted to
Yeah,
kill it, and my grandma stopped me, and she's like, imagine like a giant just like steps on you right now. So in protest, I was like, but
yeah,
yeah, but it bit me. And she's like, well, usually like ants would be by themselves, if you don't provoke them. So you probably did something to it unknowingly because you were that big compared to it. So it
yeah,
bit you. And like I let it go. And actually from that day on, I was kind of like careful in terms of like hurting animals, especially if I'm like way bigger than them. Because I try to compare like the mass of me to
yeah,
them, and I'm thinking, okay, I could have been in their way. I know, like for example, ants have like worker ants and all of this stuff, so it could have been like in a rush, and I'm just like blocking his way. So the only way it could make me like move would be to bite me, or I probably injured it in some time. But either way, there was a time where I wouldn't
you
even consider that. I would just kill. They hurt me,
hmm
but ever since that day, it like kind of like just put a different perspectives. And the way I saw it was like, if I hurt them, maybe something else is gonna hurt me in the future. So I'm careful, basically.
yeah.
What about
Well,
you?
I
How
mean,
do you calmer?
so I mean, when I'm talking about karma, I'm
Yeah.
talking more human to human interaction. There's a
Okay.
difference between obviously animals and humans
Right.
in not in the sense of one life matters more than the other or anything like that. I
Yeah.
believe every life matters, but there's a difference in the sense of nature
Mm.
versus things. So an ant, if you get in an ant's way, it's going to bite you. If
Yeah.
you get in the way, if you're too close to a snake, it's going to bite you.
Yeah.
If you piss off an elephant, it might ram you or hit you. If you aggravate a rhino, it doesn't make
Yeah.
them bad creature or anything like that because humans
Mm-hmm.
are the only things that we know that have an inherent concept of good and evil. It's something that we done ourselves. Whereas when it comes to animals, that's not nature.
Yeah.
Um, you know, like like for instance, there's a story about the snake in the fire. There was a snake in the fire,
Mm-hmm.
and this man tries to save it. Yeah, the snake then bites the man.
Yeah.
The man gets hurt, and he goes back to save the snake again. And the story is, and someone who watched the whole thing go down
Mm-hmm.
essentially asked, "Why did you save the snake after it bit you?" And he said, "It's the
Yeah.
snake to bite. It's my nature to help. I'm not going
Yeah.
to let the snake's nature affect my nature. The
Okay.
snake's going to do what it's going to do, and you've got to do what you're going to do. And if your nature is to help, then you help, no matter what the other thing is there. If you need to help, if something needs help, then you've got to help. If you're
Mm-hmm.
in a position to be able to, you can't change it. You can't say, "Oh, I'm not going to help this person because they're ungrateful." Sometimes you can. Sometimes you can. Sometimes there's situations where maybe if someone needs help and you're in a position to help, then even if they're not the most grateful of person,
Yeah.
it's not for you. It's not for you to. You shouldn't do something for the praise or for someone to feel like they're indebted to you. It's a case of you do it because that's who you are, and they'll do what they do because that's who they are,
Okay.
regardless of how it comes out. You shouldn't be really doing things for that. When I talk about karma, though, I mean doing unto others and it'll come around. So as you said, you know, I mean not necessarily in the sense that some massive giant imaginary ant's going to come out and bite you because you stepped on an ant. I mean
Yeah.
more in the sense of, do you believe good things happen to good people in the sense of that because you do good,
Yeah.
good things will come your way, and because you do bad, bad things will come your way? Or do you believe something else? Or what's your
Um.
perception on that in
Okay.
particular?
For a time, I think I
Mm-hmm.
used to believe in that wholeheartedly. Like I
Yeah.
you believe like what goes around comes around. Like I think I still believe it probably like 60% of the time. Like
Mm-hmm.
let's say for example, if somebody wronged me,
Yeah.
there would have been a time where I would have felt the need to like immediately seek revenge.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even like I think something like somebody wronged me like a few years ago and I had something that I could probably like, I don't know, like ruin them with. And
Yeah.
part of me was like, you should do it, you should do it, you should do it. But I didn't, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
I don't get their comeuppance, basically. And the thing is, I'm never gonna know. They probably like are living the best life right now, and I have no idea, and there's no consequences. But I feel like, you know, you just it's just kind of like when okay, let's say justice is not served, and you just go like, oh, I'll just leave it to the universe to take care of this or something.
Yeah.
I think it makes you feel good and it
Yeah.
stops you from also like being revengeful. So to some sense, I'm like, yeah, I do believe like what goes around comes around. But sometimes some people do things and then there's no consequences, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
True. Well, do you wish then that karma was something that was an exact? You do something, that thing will happen to you.
Yeah.
Do you wish that was the
Uh
case? Or-
I think in certain situations, because you know, sometimes like something is clearly like unjust and somebody's doing something just to be
yeah.
I'm not gonna say evil, but maybe just to be evil. And
I'm not going to say
yeah,
evil,
like in
but
terms of
maybe just
that.
to be evil.
Hmm?
I'm not going to say evil, but maybe just to be evil.
Yeah, but I the thing the reason I went that route is because I couldn't think of a word to like describe something. But
Yeah.
okay, an example I'll give is let's say a serial killer. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're going about killing a lot of people. Obviously, like in our few previous episodes we talked about like murder and like how I see it in terms of like you're robbing the person of their life, their potential, and the
Yeah.
people who care about that person, like how that's really unjust. So like somebody's doing this like multiple times. And I've seen a few documentaries where they go, oh, like this person came from like a traumatic like background, this and this and that. We still know that what they're doing is absolutely horrible. We also recognize that okay, because of the environment they grew in probably messed them up a little bit, but at the same time we still punish them for what they did because what they did is like far greater than say the injustice that happened to them. So in terms of the people who got killed, yes, they've lost so much and we punish the person. Say if we catch them, we punish them in the way we think is like is appropriate basically.
Yeah.
But like in that sense, say okay, the person who is the serial killer basically got karma,
Mm-hmm.
but it probably took a long time before they got the karma. But at the same time as well, let's say them being young, whoever did an evil to them to make them be the way they are, probably didn't have any consequences. So it's like it's like weird because like say on the internet you see like videos that go like instant karma, like somebody does something and then something else happened to them and it's funny and we watch it and we videotape it and stuff like that. So like
Yeah.
stuff like that, it's almost like, oh, faith is playing with this person, like telling them, oh, you're wrong for doing whatever. And I watch
Yeah.
things sometimes I laugh, but sometimes I'm just like, yeah, I mean, okay, yeah, they did something wrong, but also maybe they just did a bad decision that led them to facing these consequences. Let's say they slap a kid and they turn around, maybe then smack themselves into a pole and they fell down. It's absolutely funny and it's accurate to describe that as instant karma. But if you
Yeah.
want to look at it technically, he or she didn't just like observe the environment because the pole has been there for years and years and years. But also, I don't know if there's something that's controlling karma. Say a karma god could have known that this situation is going to happen and they allowed the pole to be there for this person to get hit by it at a certain day at a certain time. It's weird. Yeah. So like I'm at this like weird situation of how I see it, where I go,
Yeah.
yeah, sometimes it's literally feels like, oh, that's instant karma or karma's happened to this person. And sometimes it's like, series of unfortunate events, but it's not planned. That's the question. We don't know.
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, I think karma's a lot of when it comes to karma personally,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a lot less to do with actions and reactions.
Okay.
As in, when everyone seems to talk about it, that seems to be the go-to. It's like, oh yeah, if you do this, it'll happen instant karma. You hit a
Yeah.
kid, you hit the pole.
Yeah.
Um, I think it's more to do with the fact that good things don't happen to good people, and bad things don't happen to bad people,
Yeah.
and good things happen to bad. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes good things happen to bad people, sometimes good people. I
Yeah.
think it's more about perception, personally, in that sense that I
What,
mean,
how we
generally
interpret it.
speaking, well, in terms of perception. So
Mm-hmm.
I think it tends to be that people who are more grateful, people who are
Yeah.
more appreciative of what they have around
Yeah.
when situations arise, even if it's a situation and one person might go, I can't believe this is happening, or
Yeah.
someone else might go, I can't believe this is happening.
Yeah.
Two different meanings. But the person who generally tends to give more appreciate everything they've got around them tends to
Yeah.
see a lot more situations as opportunities
Mm-hmm.
or as things that have happened for maybe not. But
Mm-hmm.
generally speaking, their ideas are that they tend to have a more positive outlook towards things that happen to them, regardless of how someone else might see them.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas when it comes to people who maybe don't really care for others, only really care for themselves,
Yeah.
literally are only looking out for number one, when something goes wrong, they tend to notice it more. That's what they focus on. This usually
Mm-hmm.
all goes wrong for me. I do this, I do that for myself. I don't do nothing for nobody else. And when things befall them that
Yeah.
aren't the best, themselves and nobody else, then
Yeah.
there's no one around there that wants to help them. Why would I help you if you're not going to help me? And
Exactly.
therefore, these bad situations, what they're focusing on, they've also got no way out of it. Whereas those people who are more appreciative, even when they do have troubles that arise, because
Yeah.
they are people that are more appreciative, they tend to be more giving. There tends to be more people that want to give back. You help somebody really wants to help you back. It's a case of you never want to. It's not a case of you don't want to feel like you owe somebody, but if
Yeah.
someone's
For
genuine
the law of
and they're genuinely doing something or they generally need
reciprocity.
help, most people want to help if
Yeah.
they can.
Okay, so then would you say on one hand say, okay, everything that's happened to us is based on the choices we've made, conscious or subconscious?
Mm-hmm.
Or would you say on the flip side there's like this like balance in the universe that goes like, oh, like say if you do something bad to something bad in turn happens to you, or you'll get your comeuppance basically. Because like I think like in say how we see karma now, we see it as mostly negative, as like you
Mm-hmm.
sort of like touched on, because it's like, okay, if you're doing something bad, like even when you asked me about it, that's the first place I went to.
You're
But there's
going
also
back to
called
my
good karma.
yeah. Well, you're
Yeah,
going back to my perception because when I see karma, I usually see karma as a good thing. But
yeah,
you've just said what we mostly see. We mostly see karma as negative these days. That's
yeah,
again a difference in perception. I usually see it as something really good.
But
you've
that's
said
actually
that
very interesting that you touched on that, because like there's like a few like say words or like there's few things that like say right now in society that we automatically see as negative,
Mhm.
um where it's like, to me, I just say that's actually, I used to say it was negative as well, but then you get older and you think about stuff and you're like, no, 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 that thing it's just that the evidence, we have more negative evidence of than the positive evidence. So whenever somebody says like karma, because say there's like hundreds and hundreds of hours of videos showing instant karma, like there's instant karma compilations right now. If you go on YouTube, you'd find loads of them, because
Yeah.
that has been in the conscious of the society we live in. Karma has almost been associated with being negative. But let's say you did something good and then something good in turn happens to you, that is
Mhm.
classified as good karma. But really, it should just be karma in general, not good karma or bad karma. Like karma is like bad, but then to differentiate the good one, we put good in front of it when it should
You've
just be
just
karma.
said good karma and bad karma, and then said karma is bad. Karma isn't bad or good.
No, no, no,
Karma
no.
is you get
That's what I'm.
give.
That's what I'm. That's literally my point. What I'm saying is, we like associate karma itself as negative, yeah. And then
Yeah,
when something
true.
good
You also
happens,
say
we call it
negative.
good karma.
Yeah.
When it should just be karma, whether negative or positive. You get what I'm
I
saying?
think the word. I think there's a difference when people
Mhm.
say instant karma. That's
Yeah.
usually referred to in the negative sense because when you, as you said, when you look online and everything like that,
Yeah.
tends to be cheap. But also, instant karma works in the sense of there was this somewhere in Yorkshire. It was
Mhm.
Yorkshire or Greater Manchester. Not quite sure where. But basically, there was this girl who, well, essentially couldn't get home. Didn't have enough money for the bus stop.
Mhm.
Um, this homeless guy gives her the money. She knows he don't really have it like that. He's a
Yeah.
homeless guy.
Yeah.
Tends to have a lot less. But he gave what he could so that she could get home to see her family. You know,
Yeah.
and what she had then done within the week, even because it was already hitting the news. Basically, she started a GoFundMe for him because he'd helped her. She wanted to know what she could do to help him. She didn't know how to ask for it, so she raised a
Yeah.
GoFundMe for him and raised him over £20,000. That's also instant karma. That happened. It was
Mhm.
a little bit quicker. Instant karma generally tends to turn to the negative. Karma itself doesn't. Karma is just karma. And I think that is how
Yeah.
it's seen. If you type karma, you'll get just as many good as you'll get bad. And they both say they have their connotations in front of them: good karma, bad karma. If you say
Yeah.
instant karma, if it's a video, usually it will be something negative. If you
Yeah.
say
That's
instant karma and it's a news story, usually it'll be something good.
good.
It just
That's what I'm.
depends on the way that you're consuming the media.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm not
but
like trying to
again,
say that
it's all
karma,
about perception
bad
because
karma.
something that seems bad to somebody might
Mm.
seem good to somebody else. It's this story that I heard about. Yeah, it's about a Chinese farmer.
I think I know the story, but yeah.
Um,
Aaron.
yeah. So he went to so he works his farm. Yeah, he
Mhm.
has one horse. The horse escapes, and then the village people look at him. Oh, that's so bad. And he
Yeah.
says, "Maybe." They then, or so then the next day, 7 horses come back,
Yeah.
and they go,
So
"Oh,
that's
my
good.
gosh, that's so good."
Yeah.
And he
So
says, "Maybe."
yeah.
Then his son goes and rides on one of the horses and breaks his leg. And
Yeah.
they come back and they say, "Oh no, that's so bad." And he goes, "Maybe." And then the next day, the conscription officers come around to pull everyone up for World War II.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they look over his son, and because he's got a broken leg, they go past him.
Bingo.
And
Yeah.
eventually, that's so good. And he goes, "Maybe."
Yeah.
At the end of the story. There's nothing. The point of that story is that everything that happened that sounded good or sounded bad led to something else. You never know how a situation really affects you until you get to the end of it. Something that you thought you may have wanted or needed, or something that would have completed your life,
Yeah.
may not be anything. It might not turn out to be. There's something that's insignificant or something that's really bad might turn out to be the biggest reward of your life. If it never happened, you might not have met this person. If it never happened, you might not have been able to do that. If
Mhm.
it did happen, you might have missed doing that. You never know how things affect us. And that's when it comes to karma. It's not negative or positive. You give what you get. You
It's
get what
just,
you give.
yeah.
It is all about, as far as I'm concerned, perception.
Yeah.
How you perceive it. That person didn't perceive it as anything. That's the point of the story, is that he didn't know how it was going to affect, and that's why he chose to have a neutral perception of it. And it then became something positive, something negative, something positive, something negative. Whereas, like I said, people who tend to have a positive outlook, people who tend to be more gratuitous of what they have, they have enough. They value what they've already got. If you don't value what you've got and you're always looking for more, then nothing's ever going to be enough. If you value what you've got, then you're only going to keep getting more. Your heart might be also, if your heart's full, your heart can still be full. Love is infinite, and things that you appreciate and everything like that can be infinitely multiplied. But likewise, on the flip side of that, if you never have enough, you will never have enough.
That's very true. Like the same story. Like I heard it. I think I watched a TED talk about it, and one of the conclusions was like, we give meaning to stuff that happened to us, and like you said, if you see something as bad, then it will be bad because that's all you see. And if you see it as good, it is what it is. But then if you also see it as it's just is, that's actually its true form. Because like you said, for example, the son fell from the horse and broke his leg. That's seen as negative because generally people don't like the legs being broken, so it's seen as negative, and people reacted accordingly. And but then again, time went forward, and then people were being recruited into war, which meant they would lose their life. And he was skipped, and people went, "Oh, that's good." Because if you think, I think if they're trying to think about the consequences, because now the broken leg acted as a savior, but also it's not as important as losing your life, because people would like at that point think about the people who got like recruited would rather have their legs broken than going to war and potentially killing people or dying from it. So it's like, I think it's just the it's almost like a gift and a curse, the human nature, where like we have the ability to assign meaning to things, where like something negative or something positive might happen to you. Like exactly, we have the words for it to go, this is negative or this is positive. But if you think about it in terms of electricity, like a negative charge or a positive charge, like they're charges, or okay, obviously they're opposite, but like that's just what they are. They're opposite. Like it's not negative charge means always bad electricity, or positive charge means always good electricity. No, they have to work together to like make current flow. I hope I didn't butcher that to all the like
You've
science
got
community.
scientists just screaming at you now, like, you don't know how electricity works.
It helps with the flow of electricity. They have to be like in balance with each other for electricity to flow. That's where I'm going to put it. If I'm wrong, I'll look into it more. But that, from my knowledge, I think that's how it works. Like these two things like just exist together in harmony. It's almost like yin yang. So, but then again, we sometimes we just isolate the yin and maybe associate that with positivity, and then isolate the yang and then see it as negative, where we could have just tried to see it as a whole, or just see something as what it is. It's almost boring to like, and like kind of stoic to just go, like the guy example. Let's see, everybody's like, oh my god, like your son got skipped, that's so good. And it's like, maybe like that would annoy a lot of people, because they'd go, dude, you're not matching our energy, and what is wrong with you? But his response was right, because truly you don't know if it's good or bad. You just have to wait and see.
No, because like certain areas, again, you got to think. It's don't know if you've been keeping up with the news, but
Nope.
the whole Ukraine versus Russia, or Russia versus Ukraine. Basically, Russia has been targeting. Looks like where they were trying to avoid civilian areas originally, they're now targeting civilian areas. What's it? Israel versus Palestine again. They target civilian areas. It's a case of sometimes, going to war, you might evade that bomb. So again, you don't know. But talking of when we said about the conscription, then personally speaking, what would you do if you got conscripted? Would you choose jail or war? Now,
That
let me tell you before, of
yeah,
course, what it is. I've already looked into this myself in
yeah.
terms of what it would actually be. So,
Mm-hmm.
if you refuse to go to war,
Yeah.
um, then the conscription of sorry, the jail time is
Mm-hmm.
a military term. So in the UK, that is 3 years, which means
Okay.
that because of you bailing on war,
Yeah.
essentially not going to UK, it would be a case of you don't get out early on good behaviour or anything like that. You're in there for the term of your
Yeah.
military career. So
Okay.
military career, like I said, is typically 3 years. You can choose to stay there longer. A lot of people
Yeah.
do. You can rank up within it, but you're only forced to do 3 years. Anything you sign up on longer than that, you then also have to go for.
Yeah.
For purposes of 3 years. So, would you rather go to war or spend 3 years in jail?
I have no idea what I'd do, to be honest. Because
They're at your door.
yeah, no, but hold on. Because okay, right now, currently I'm not in any military capacity or whatever. But like how I see it, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
am going to potentially take lives of a person or multiple people
Yeah.
who are also trying to kill me as well.
Mm-hmm.
So like I kind of have a problem with that, but I also understand like when it comes to like say survival,
Mm-hmm.
I know in the end when like thick like it comes to it, I'll probably look out for me, number one.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I'll potentially kill someone to save my life.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people would not like to think that, but like that's kind of how it is. That's just like the laws of nature. And it's like,
Actually, should I put something in there whilst you're talking?
yeah.
Um, in terms of war today and war even 150 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, deaths have gone down by at least 70%. And the thing is because as weapons have improved and it's
Yeah.
become easier to kill somebody,
Yeah.
it's become harder for people to pull the trigger. Because when you're looking at other people and as the world's become more connected,
Yeah.
and they look like you, they might not necessarily look like you in skin tone, ethnicity, or race, but
Yeah.
they are humans on two legs, two arms sometimes.
Yeah.
And you're looking at the face of another human. And rather than in war, how it used to be, where you could go in and you'd have to fight sword to sword, so it's in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're used to fighting at a distance, because barely anybody takes a sword into war. Some people
Yeah.
still do, but
Yeah.
barely anybody does. Usually you've got your guns, and as it's easier to pull the trigger, it's
Yeah.
harder for people to pull the trigger, because essentially you could end someone's life quick.
Yeah,
So
but
actually, deaths in war have
you're
declined.
still doing it because, like, okay, right now, yeah. Think about
Mm-hmm.
both of the war, yeah.
Yeah,
So let's say you have the rest of Europe on one side and you have Russia on the other side,
yeah,
yeah, and some of the Ukrainian states that want to be part of Russia.
mm-hmm.
Uh, okay, so okay, this side thinks they're right, the other side thinks they're right, yeah.
Yeah,
You think about both sides as like these massive pyramids. On top of those pyramids, there are people, decision makers who are there,
yeah,
make decisions going, this is what I want, that's what I want. They get there based on the power they have. I'm not going to talk about if they deserve it or not, but they're there right now. That's the situation. That's
yeah,
the current situation. There are people making decisions because they're on the top. And in order to, say, flex their power or get what they want, they use the people under them to make that happen by
mm-hmm.
providing resources, by sending military, or whatever they're doing. Let's just call them resources in general. So those resources involve humans, yeah? And
Yeah,
sometimes that would mean these set of humans would have to kill those other set of humans.
yeah,
So I'm gonna like, yeah, but like I'm gonna have to kill somebody for something I don't necessarily like care about deep
yeah,
down. But it's because I've signed up to say do this job or whatever. Now
mm-hmm.
I have to go literally risk my life. Okay, we can talk about okay, this person is unjust, what they're doing, it's not allowed or whatever. But
Mm-hmm.
technically, what Russia's doing is not new.
No,
America has been at it for the longest of times.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they've sacrificed loads of resources, human life. They've destroyed families. They've done all of these things,
Yeah.
and people have been like kind of quiet about it. So like, I think that's why I'm not following the Russian thing, because I'm just like, yeah, but America has been doing it for like decades, and nobody batted an eye, and Russia's doing it, and everybody's just clutching their pearls. Oh my god, it's horrible.
Not just
It
put
is horrible,
America in it. Well, a lot of European countries, including the UK, have been
including
doing
the
it too.
yeah, exactly. So I'm just like, okay, to me
Or
personally,
turning a blind eye to it before now,
yeah,
because the people
personally, all
were
these
not
countries have
the
been
same
doing
country.
it, and nobody's talking
Yeah.
about war.
There's actually a news
Now,
story I watched today
yeah.
about it was a Polish news channel,
Mm.
and they were talking their exact words. Of course, I had to have it translated. I only speak minimal
Yeah,
English, but basically they had to translate it. Well, no, they didn't have to translate it. I
you had to
watched
translate
it.
it.
Yeah, yeah, that's it. And
Yeah.
one of the things they said is these aren't Syrians, you know.
Hmm.
These are European.
Yeah.
These are white Christians. Of course, we're letting them into our country.
Yeah.
And you know what? The funny thing is, they weren't
Yeah.
the only ones saying it. You know, it wasn't that they were the ones to outright say it in that format, but other ones were saying, you know, these. But a lot of people were saying this isn't Iraq, this isn't Afghanistan,
Yeah.
this isn't Syria,
Yeah.
and it's a case of okay, yeah, it's not no places, but those places are humans too. So what you're inherently saying is that oh, because they look like me, they
Yeah.
shouldn't be going through that. They should only be going through that if they
Hmm.
look like you, which is discolored, which is not discolored, which is like the original color. What do you mean?
Yeah.
But not getting into any of that. That's a whole part of where I am personally.
Yeah.
I hope that they all make it out alive as things, and I do hope they manage to ward them off because I don't believe anyone should be. I don't believe anyone should be under the control of anybody else personally. But at the
Exactly.
same time,
Yeah.
it's really hypocritical what you'll see in the news.
It
And
is.
kind of insane. But
Right.
detracting from that, you haven't answered the question. So,
No, but what I'm
jail
saying,
or
okay,
what?
okay. So knowing everything, I know, I'll probably choose jail, because
Yeah.
like, okay, in the end, I'm doing somebody else's bidding.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, I don't really care about it. Although, okay, at the same time, I'm not going to support somebody else like trying to bully somebody else. So if I can do something to help, I would. But knowing that I would have to literally murder a lot of people to make this a reality,
Yeah.
although it might be a sacrifice that's necessary, I don't think it's going to be like a sacrifice I'll be willing to do, unless if
Mm-hmm.
that's the only way to do it. But like, I think there might be like a different solution. But also, there's also this like thing. It's almost like a conspiracy theory where they're like, oh, okay, so America wants this war because they have a deal with like some Asian countries, for example Saudi, where if say Russia attacks, like Russia's attack now, America can then in turn go like sanction everything from Russia. And because a lot of countries depend on Russia for oil, they would have to go in the Middle East. And the well, you can't sell oil in any other currency apart from the dollar. And
Yeah.
if all these countries now rely on the Middle East for oil, which is backed by the dollar, that bit only makes the dollar like better. Because for right now, inflation is really high. It's like 7% going up.
Yeah.
So the theory is America basically is instigating this thing, this war, so they can basically make their currency more like powerful. I don't know
Yeah.
if this is true. I have no idea if this is true, but like say it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
This would also mean as a soldier, you the individual, you are basically like a pawn
Yeah.
to make somebody else like basically evil genius plan work.
Yeah.
So
Well,
okay,
I mean,
in terms of
yeah.
karma, actually, in terms of karma, let's take it back to the topic. Like in terms of karma, like how do you think it works in a situation like this? Let's say saying everything I said is true. I don't know if it's
Mhm.
true, but that's like the theory I saw floating around, and I was like, it's kind of
Yeah.
interesting. I don't have any proof, so I can't like just go like, oh, it's true. But let's say it's true. How would you say karma like happens in this, because generally if you're of the belief that, oh, like there's this like just power or God, whatever, who gives everybody their comeuppance for doing whatever choice, like especially if it's a bad choice or something bad happens to them, like what would you say the karma would be for America for instigating this, if they did?
Well, if they did and that was to come to light, it would be hard to instigate any sort of karma against them. For the simple fact is, America has the largest army in the world.
Yeah.
They also, their army is larger than the following 25 biggest armies in the world, which 24 of which are their allies. So it's bigger than the following 25 combined, sorry.
Yeah.
And 24 of which are their allies. It's really hard to put anything against them in that sense. Personally speaking, I had a, it was, so I had a conversation with my, I'm going to go into that because that's a little bit off topic, but
you don't want to share the tea?
Sorry?
No.
I'll share the tea. It's not any tea itself. It was a conversation we had, but essentially something had happened in the news, which was pretty big. And they asked me what my opinion was on it. And they said to me, well, what's your opinion? What's actually happening? And I said, I don't know enough about it to have an opinion.
Yeah.
And then they were like, oh, pulled up Reddit and was like, well, this is happening, that's happening, that's happening, that's happening. And yeah, what they were saying was happening is really bad. And even then, I don't know enough to have an opinion on it. For the simple fact of, as much as it seems like we have freedom of information, anything we'd like to know, we can know. The fact is, in terms of the global rankings, and freedom of information, the UK actually ranks 40th in the world. There's 39 more countries that have more freedom of information than us. We're not even in the top 10. So the fact that, considering there's almost 200 countries and we're only in the top third, it means there's a lot that we don't have access to. There's a lot that we don't know. There's a lot that we can't make assumptions on what we've just got, because there's a high chance that we don't have all the information. Actually, because we're not top in freedom of information.
Yeah,
therefore we probably don't have the complete picture.
I think personal story actually, but yeah, carry on.
Yeah, so that's what I had in that regard. In regards to karma towards America, I don't know. In the terms of that being a possibility, it could be. I don't know. But the fact is that the whole reason they went to war in the Middle East and killed Gaddafi, I think his name was because, not because of a dictatorship, which is what they told. It was because he'd actually had plans to stop using the US dollar as a currency for exchange for his oil, and instead wanted to implement gold and make sure that it was paid in worth of gold, which of course
he's African.
A lot of the UK, not the UK, sorry, a lot of America isn't gold backed. It's backed on their credit in their trade unions and stuff like that, because they've been bailed out quite a few times by China. In fact, they owe over 50 trillion, I think, to China. And that their money is their money isn't gold backed anymore. It used to be, but it's not anymore.
That's true. I just wanted to quickly say Gaddafi is African, he's not Middle Eastern. I think he's of African descent.
South African? I'd have to Google it. Let me.
Libyan or Egyptian. I think it's Libyan. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
it's Libyan, because I remember he'd actually had this meeting.
That's North Africa then. Yeah.
What?
That's North, isn't it? That's North Africa.
Yeah, that's North Africa. And I was like, wait, Libya is Africa. But people. But that's the thing. People saw. That's one part. That's one aspect of it. But even talking about Gaddafi right now, that's one side of it. Another side, like, okay, we saw him as a saint. I remember being young. He actually came to our country for an AU summit. AU summit is Africans Union summit. Yeah, I think, where all the come together and they talk about how to make Africa better or whatever. We saw him as like this charm guy, had money and doing all these good things. And then also here, oh no, he was as nice as everybody thought. He's like evil. People hated him. He did all of this horrible stuff. So like, in terms of you saying, I don't know enough to have an opinion on this, I kind of like see the world like that because, like you're saying, we live in a country where we are ranked the 48 in terms of freedom of information.
Yeah.
So what things that we don't know, yeah, okay, we make our reaction based on like stuff we are presented with or the evidence we've seen. We do that in most cases, but at the same time, it takes like willpower to go. Maybe I don't know the whole story, you know, because everything we see, like somebody had to write it, somebody had to make a video, somebody had to talk about it, they had to upload it before we saw it, you know. So like,
Mm-hmm.
what is the agenda of that person or these people? Like, why do they want us to see certain things and not the other things? Now, with personal story, what I was gonna talk about was I had some friends. I've been living in England for a while now, and they were like they were
You have
surprised
friends.
how good my like my English was,
Yeah.
and not to offend me, but they just asked, "Hey, like, how come your English is very good? You've told us you've not lived here like for a really long time, but like you speak fluently." And I told them, "Yeah, I've been speaking English all my life," and they were really shocked by it
Yeah.
because like their perception of where I'm from was totally different to how it is.
Yeah.
I went on to tell them, "Oh, it's our national like
Colonization, really.
language." Yeah, but I was also surprised that they didn't know this. And so I was at a party and let's spend like 15 minutes like giving them like a quick lecture about my country and its relations to like England basically.
Yeah.
So I had to just give them like the lowdown, like, oh, okay, we used to be ones, we were a colony of England. Obviously, our grandparents, great great grandparents were forced to learn English, and because of all these laws and all of that stuff, it's our national language. Even though we have between 7 to 10 languages in my country, and none of them is a national language. I'm not gonna get into that, but like that's part of the reason why I was like good with it, and I knew more about like England than
Mm-hmm.
British people knew more about my country, and that was really shocking to me because I was just like they were really surprised when I told them all of these things. And I was surprised thinking, you didn't know this? I thought this was common knowledge
Yeah.
when they had no idea that like my country even existed. Like,
I was going to say,
like
the only thing I knew about your country is that it existed
yeah,
before I met you. Yeah.
exactly. And like somebody though, this is another funny story where I was talking about like visa. I was like, oh, how hard it is to get a visa to someone. And they were like, what's a visa? And oh no, they thought the visa was like the visa payment. And I was like, no, no,
Yeah.
no, no. It's it's this document that like a country will like grant you to basically enter that country, and they're like, "What?" This was before all Brexit and everything, but I was just
Yeah.
like,
Now I know what a visa is now. Yeah.
"Yeah," and I was like, "Yo, what? Really? You don't know what it is? This is like one of the most important things for like loads and loads of people,
Yeah.
and there are people who like live in that country, and they're just like, oh no, you just need a passport to travel." So like yeah, in terms of information, the amount of like what we know, we don't know. That's the thing. The more like I learn stuff, the more I go, whoa, I don't know anything. Because the way I say it, say okay, you're born in the 90s.
Hmm.
Everything that happened until the 90s, yeah,
Yeah.
even until the moment you're born, because like there is a period of time like when you become conscious, or I joke, there's a period of time where you become online. But even when you
Hmm.
start learning things, there's still so many things that you didn't know in your own time.
Yeah.
And then all the time before you, like so much information, so much like stuff that has just you have no idea about. So like it's weird to kind of like just have an opinion based on say a video or a Reddit post or something. So like the
Yeah.
right thing to do would be like, yeah, hey, listen, this looks horrible. I don't agree that it's happening. Yeah, you can talk about it, like something unjust that's not like that's happening, and you have an
Yeah.
opinion on that, but also like the context at which that's happening, you have no idea. Another example I give you, this is really funny to me. I watch a lot of nature documentaries, and the
Yeah.
David Attenborough documentary where there was like two different ants like fighting. I think it was red ants and black ants and stuff like that. It was like a vicious war. So with
Yeah.
the macro, when like the cameraman zoomed in and there
Hmm.
was epic music playing, and by the way, these ants were going at it like two ants from the same like side would capture an ant from the other side.
Hmm.
They would bite its like abdomen, and the other one would like literally spray acid in their guts and make it melt. Like
Yeah.
we talk about something really brutal, and like when you're
Yeah.
watching it zoomed in, like you're into it, you're going, "Oh my god, this is really epic but gruesome at the same time." And then they zoomed out, and there's just David Attenborough just like casually just watching this whilst it's
Yeah.
unfolding. Like he's unaffected by it. And it
Yeah.
blew my mind because I was like, with the ants, this is life or death right there.
Yeah.
And there's just some guy who's just chill and he's just watching
Yeah.
this like it's nothing. And I was like, whoa. So like if you think about the conflict we're having right now, obviously like families are being affected, so many horrible stuff is happening.
Mm.
But like if you could just zoom out of Earth, out of our solar system,
A
like
couple of the aliens in a spaceship just chilling, watching it, eating
yeah,
popcorn.
exactly.
Might be
It
an
looks
equivalent
like
here.
it's nothing. I'm not saying it's nothing, but I'm just like saying in
Mm.
terms of like context in the whole grand scheme of things, it probably is just minute, you know. So I don't
Well,
know.
in the grand scheme of things, if you was to shrink if you was to get all the sand in the world,
Yeah.
you know, and have each of that represent a star,
Mm-hmm.
we wouldn't have enough sand. We wouldn't even represent a grain of sand, you know. So, you know, that's if you're talking grand scheme, then yeah, we
Yeah.
are.
So
It could seem that way.
yeah.
Here's another interesting thing.
Mm.
We'll go back. We'll go back. We're in 2020. We'll go back 80 years.
We're in 2022.
Yeah, we're in the 2020s.
Okay.
Ease, you know, like the noughties, the 2020s. Yeah,
You
okay.
can tell that
So
I
we're
was
in
a
the
kid from
2020s.
school who like tried to correct everyone. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to get over it.
Yeah. So we're in
Yeah.
the 2020s. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're going to go back 80 years. Yeah. So 80 years ago, yeah, World War II.
Yeah.
Did you know that America, well, not even World War II, let's go World War One,
Yeah.
actually, because it was actually World War One, if we're being honest.
Mm-hmm.
But when Germany had first started fighting,
Yeah.
you know, they actually, the Americans were actually rooting for Germany because the
Yeah.
Americans, the citizens at least, still
Yeah.
hadn't forgiven the British
Yeah.
for their War of Independence situation that they got
Oh,
away.
that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. They still hadn't, that had happened about what 300 years ago.
Was it like
Um,
760 or 1860? I don't know.
yeah,
One of those. Yeah.
it was in the 17s because it was just under it was 80 to 100 years before where there was like what's it? This is the land of the free.
Yeah.
They actually freed the slaves. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's yeah. Basically,
Mm.
and again, that's another thing. Before I go into that, the only
Yeah.
reason, do you know the only reason why Lincoln was for freeing the slaves?
It was
It was because
practical.
countries around the world had stopped slavery a lot longer than they had, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So they were one of the only countries still doing it, and essentially it was stopping countries from wanting to trade with them because, of course, it's like you're still using slave labor. We've
Yeah.
outlawed that. We don't
But it
want to
also
trade with.
had to do with the war they had with the Southern Americans as well.
It was part of it, yeah. That was
Yeah.
part of it too.
But that's the thing. So that
But
they
anyway,
got like you hear like
back to the
information.
thing. Do you know why? Do you know why Americans are so on our side again, and why there's that right? Because obviously, because the British
Mm.
used to own America. That's why a lot of Americans have the inferiority complex, or the British superiority complex, if you will.
Yeah.
Where if you've got a British accent, it tends to get you in the door for higher paying jobs off the bat, just because you're British. I mean, you have to have the qualifications too, but it's easier to get the qualifications here.
Yeah.
Although our education system is atrocious in the sense that about 10-15 years ago, it used to cost, no, sorry, that's because it's almost 10 years ago since I went to uni. Going back 20-30 years ago, I forget how old we are now. But yeah, going back 20-30 years ago,
Hey, we are
it
still
used to cost about
when
3
you're not
grand
that
a
old.
course. And that was, no. But I mean, how old we are comparatively to what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But anyway, so about 20-30 years ago, to
Mhm.
get a uni degree, it used to cost 3 grand a year.
Yeah.
And here's the kicker: students were protesting because that was too expensive. Because before that, it used to be
Yeah.
even cheaper, and I was like, that's extortion. And
Yeah.
then that's actually how the Conservatives managed to take power back the first time, because they said we'd get rid of the tuition fees,
Yeah.
and what they did instead was triple them. So instead of paying 9 grand in total, he was
Yeah.
paying 9 to 11.5 grand every year.
Yeah, but also about that as well, like, okay, it's still expensive, but at the same time as well, even like
Yeah,
if you then compare that against, say, American tuition, you'd go, this one's cheaper. Then you then
that
compare
is.
that to maybe Sweden, and you go, huh, ours might be a bit expensive. So
If
like
you
it's
compare that to Scotland,
yeah,
yeah, let's keep it local. If you
yeah.
compare it to Scotland, if
Sweden is not
you're a
far.
Scottish citizen or
Mm-hmm.
your grandparents are Scottish, I think it goes as far. I think it's 2 generations, so it's your parents or your grandparents.
Yeah.
Yeah, if one of them is Scottish,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, then or a Scottish citizen. Sorry, couldn't speak for a second. You can actually go up to Scotland and do a course at the same level, and
Yeah.
sometimes, in fact, a better course,
Yeah.
because actually the Scottish school system, one of the things I'll say, if there's, I'll say their education system, you can't fault. I have a few gone from Scotland to down here, and
Yeah.
basically, when they'd come down,
Mm.
they essentially was doing the same stuff they were doing the year before. They was
Yeah.
their curriculum is ahead of ours. They tend to be generally smarter, and the education up there is free. So it's you know it's
That
first, and
happens.
that's next door.
Yeah.
That's next door, and they are seriously, as a country,
Yeah.
they are seriously underfunded because they're a smaller populace, and because they're so far up north, and because the UK government really is just the English government and nobody really cares for centralised England at that. So anything like Scotland or Ireland tends to get the short end of the stick.
Mm.
If you're still in England, you get more, you get a lot more. Apart from in education, where Scotland crushes it, there is a lot that they don't. There's a lot that they have that we don't have. Even like their water reserve system. There's enough water in Loch Ness
Mm.
alone, which is that there's more water in there than there is in the whole of England. In fact, we get a lot of our water from Wales.
Wow.
Um,
But see, that's the
but,
thing. It comes back to like perception and how we see things. For example, Americans see like British as like superiors. Like a lot of people see
yeah,
Britain as like very superior. It's called the
yeah,
Great Britain for God's sake, you know.
yeah,
And then there would be people who see Americans go, "Oh my God, Americans, this and that." But it's all based on like perception, like as you said,
yeah.
and even to me personally, I didn't like the idea of coming to England when I
Mhm.
found out I was coming here because we used to have like exercise books and it showed like cities on the back. So like
Yeah,
say like Golden State Bridge, like it would be proudly like shown in all of these like high rise buildings. And when it came to England, and all I
yeah,
saw was like castles and all of these old buildings, and that was boring to
yeah,
me. I was just like, castles, ugh, that's gross. I much
mm,
like the skyscrapers and all that stuff. So when I was coming to England, I just thought, oh, I'm coming to the place of old buildings. And that's not wrong because like England's got a lot of old buildings. Like,
it's true.
later on I found out, oh, they are grade one, grade two, and all of that stuff because I did construction. So I know a
Yeah,
little bit about buildings now, but that's how I saw it. So imagine my surprise, like going seeing London for the first time and going, oh, okay, that's interesting. So it's like a combo of both their skyscrapers, but also there's like the Tower Bridge. There's all this like the Buckingham Palace and all these buildings that look like old, classic, and all that stuff. And
yeah,
even me saying this, like, oh, England is a place of old buildings, like, I'm pretty sure somebody would be offended by it, going, oh, you don't know culture or whatever. But in the grand scheme of things, it is just buildings, and they are old. Like, that's not a criticism. That's more like fact here. So my perception of England was different to me coming here. Yeah.
yeah,
Even when I came here, I still had like a kind of a perception. I was like, oh, this place is very lonely and all that stuff. And that
mhm,
changed a little bit because I think the year I came, somebody was missing. Unfortunately for her, she wasn't found. But on the news, I saw like loads of people leave work to help search, and it was people in the thousands like trying to search for this person. Unfortunately, they didn't, but that literally warmed my heart, and I was like, oh wow, okay, it looks lonely, people look isolated, but also they do come together to help somebody else in need who is a complete stranger to them.
Yeah.
So slowly and slowly, my perception of it is changing. I mean, I'm not like also blinded by all the atrocities that they've committed, but that's
Yeah.
humans in general. If you think about it, like
Yeah.
nobody, like okay, I'm not gonna say nobody's innocent. Some people are innocent. Some people are angels. Live earth,
Mhm.
peacefully die, and then hurt a soul. And some people are quite the opposite. But the potential to be both those things, to me, is a human nature. So like kind of like ties down to like karma, which is it's almost like I say karma is the equivalent of like for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. Like
No, that's
that's how I
Newton's laws of physics.
yeah.
You're going away from karma. I
No,
mean,
to me
I
it's the
know what
same.
you
No, let me explain.
you
Give
don't
me a
have
chance to explain
to.
myself. You can't just dismiss me like because you don't agree with. Just let
I'm
me
not
explain myself.
dismissing you. You kind of cut in on my story
How?
because I was still telling it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Apology.
yeah, okay. But I said further to your point, I wasn't dismissing you anyway. What I was going to say is you don't have to keep trying to relate it back to karma. That was just a starting conversation. But
Right.
anyway, what I was saying back towards about where I was talking about the education systems and everything like that, and you're like, yeah, but compared to America, which was actually going to be my point, I
Yeah.
might add. No, the reason why
Yeah.
America actually turned and our relationship drastically changed with them was actually because the propaganda that the government, although the citizens were against England and wanted Germany to win,
Yeah.
the government was obviously on friendly relations with it. So the way they turned the people around so that now we have friendly relations with America, almost to a fault, is the fact that they had started releasing a lot of propaganda.
Yeah.
And they said that Germans eat babies. This wasn't Nazis or anything like that. This was Germans eat babies, and you
Germans in
can
general.
Google
Yeah.
it yourself. Yeah, that's actually one of the driving forces, and the people obviously believed that. As like Germans eat babies,
Yeah.
And then eventually they came to arms and assisted us in the war. But
Yeah.
the first part that was because their government had told them that they eat babies, and that's something that can happen today where what you're being fed might not necessarily always be the truth.
Exactly.
Sometimes that's why you have to have that sort of, well, how free is the information in our country really? There's a lot that this government has tried to bury in the past, a lot
Yep.
to do with, as you've said, back in Gambia, where you've got that island that you talked about where they kept slaves in storage, where there wasn't enough
Yeah.
space for anything. A place like that, that's non-existent in our textbooks. The
Nope.
whole war against the Zulu tribe. If you talk about it if you grew up about learning about in England, it
Yeah.
was a brave war fought against the Zulu nation.
Yeah.
There was war heroes and everything.
But it
You
was
talk
massive.
about it on the side of Africa, yeah, it was people with shields and spears
Yeah.
against people with machine guns. It's not really a fair fight. It was a one-way slaughter, and it's just it's things that you need to go outside of your own country almost to learn,
Yeah.
because certain things that they'll try to hide from you, not necessarily to be evil, but to not give you that sort of complex. It's basically the opposite of what Germany did, because Germany, if you go to Jenny German schools, when they talk about Nazis and the war, they talk about it. They talk about what went wrong, what were the signs they could avoid for next time, and just generally that they were the bad guys in that situation, because of course it wasn't just anti-Jews, it was pretty much anti anything that wasn't blonde hair, blue eyes, unless you're German heritage, in which case you can stay, but you're still not the master race. And they talk about that
crazy
we
that
don't.
like with that concept of like, okay, blue eyes, blonde hair, where like we deluded ourselves, like all the people, not me, I'm not included because I'm not I don't have blue eyes or blonde hair. The people at the time who
Mhm.
basically deluded themselves into thinking they were the superior like race or they were the master race, when
Mhm.
the thing that they literally have was something that they didn't control. Like they had zero. Like they just were human and they happen to have that future. Like to then look at that and go, oh, I have this because, you know, I'm superior. Like somebody had to tell them, somebody had to convince them. There was an experience. I think it's called the blue eyes, green eye thing.
Yeah.
This teacher did it with like nursery schools. She came and she was like, oh, like if you have green eyes or if you have blue eyes, from now, like they gave them like the people with green eyes, I think, or blue eyes. Let's go with blue eyes. People with blue eyes, they gave them like a position of power. Told them they were better than the people with green eyes. And slowly over, like as the day was going, the people with blue eyes like started believing that, and then treating the people with green eyes like poorly. And these are all white
Yeah.
kids, right? And that to me, that
Yeah.
just shows
No,
you like it's
I know what you're
human.
talking about. Yeah, it's Jane Elliott.
Yeah,
Jane Elliott. I
yeah.
really love her.
Normally, everybody like lives like everything's fine. I don't care. Okay, we're different, but we're still human. Until somebody goes, "Oh no, 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 no! Look at all these benign futures that you have that the
Mm.
other person or the race doesn't have. That makes you better." If I
Yeah.
can just back to like when we mentioned like Syria, when this has been happening for years and years, America occupying all these countries, and it's
Yeah.
never the way it's been like described compared to say Russia trying to go to Ukraine, like oh these are not Israelites, these are like our blue-eyed like people who are our neighbors,
Mm.
like this shouldn't be
Mm.
happening to them, as if whatever is happening in Israel or Iraq is supposed to be normal.
Yeah.
None of this shit is normal. Like that's
No.
the point. But like to compare and contrast and go, oh no, 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 it's normal over there, but it's not normal here. It's kind of
Yeah.
like the same rhetoric that kind of makes people brings out the worst in people, because then
Yeah.
it creates that the us versus them.
Yeah.
You
It was
know?
like in that Jane Elliott study, because she started out saying blue eyes were better, and then the
Yeah,
following day,
yeah,
it was either the following day or it was after lunch. I think it
yeah,
was the following day. It was a 2 day experiment, I believe.
yeah, yeah,
She then said that she lied
yeah,
because she had blue eyes, and
yeah,
actually green-eyed people are better. And
yeah,
on that second day,
yeah,
even after being discriminated against for a whole day,
yeah.
one of the green-eyed kids got
Mm.
into a fight with another one of the green-eyed kids
Mm-hmm.
because that green-eyed kid had called him blue eyes,
Yeah. Yeah,
and that's
because
something.
like
So yeah,
you despise being the other, so like you're afraid of being the other so much that even somebody accusing you of it causes
yeah,
you. But it's
it became
ah, it's really scary because like I feel like somebody like who understands this nature in human beings or this trait in human beings can manipulate it in good or bad ways, and it's mostly manipulated in really really bad ways, because like to us we're always afraid of the other. That's like kind of like how we've been told, like oh my god, they do want to change our livelihood, they want all of these things, even when it comes to religion, like Christianity versus like Islam and all of that stuff. For example, I learned this recently and it blew my mind. You know,
yeah,
algorithms and like there was like yeah, so algorithms, I think the algebra and all of that stuff was actually from Islam.
Arabic,
And
yeah,
I'm like,
it's Arabic.
what? Yeah, and I was like,
Even
what?
our numbers, Arabic numbers are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8,
Yeah.
9, 10,
And
and so
even
on and so forth.
astronomy, not astronomy, no,
Astronomy, yeah,
what's the study of star?
astronomy,
Yeah, astronomy. Yeah, even
yeah,
that was like they discovered all of that stuff, but it's been like I'm not gonna. I hate using systematic, but like it's been hidden, and this is
yeah.
like knowledge that we don't have. And now the perception of like Muslims or Islam is like, oh, they kill other people, suicide
Yeah,
bomber,
there's a
all of this stuff.
survey that was done in America where
Hmm.
they said, should we start teaching kids Arabic numbers
Yeah,
in school?
yeah,
And 62% of them
yeah,
said no.
yeah,
And it's like, I say, and then the of the 40, sorry, I don't know my I think the 38 that said
yeah,
yes.
yeah,
You don't know whether they were saying that to be, oh, well, because numbers are Arabic numbers, or
yeah,
whether they were saying that because they're like, oh no, we need to be more inclusive.
yeah,
Um, Whereas 62% were obviously definitely
yeah.
going,
They're like, hell no.
no, 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 you're not going to bring that here because of the xenophobia that comes from it. And I think it's something that can only be manipulated in a negative sense for the simple fact that us first
Yeah,
tends to be a negative outgoing. It's a negative perception because if you believe this stuff, us and you believe there is in them, that means there is another. As you said, there is a not you. You can't be empathetic to someone who is another. You know,
Yeah, no,
you'll
the
sit there.
thing is though,
When
we
it comes to animals and such, you don't think of it's us versus dogs. You just think,
yeah,
oh, there's dogs. And that's why we have
exactly.
them.
Yeah.
But, yeah, but but when there's an us versus them, it can only be used as a weapon as such. That's how Donald Trump got in power. He weaponized people's the xenophobic nature of Americans to get himself elected. That's why Boris Johnson got in power, because he used the xenophobic rhetoric against Eastern Europeans and the European Union,
Yeah.
which again is stupid. You know, that is why a lot of people gain their power, because
Okay.
fear is
I have a
easier to
question for you,
control
a
than love.
potentially problematic question for you.
Yeah.
You know how you gave all these examples of all these people who basically kind of like looked at the system, noticed something about it, and then used that to gain power.
Yeah.
Would you give them merit?
Would I give them merit?
Yeah. Because they
No.
looked at the system and went, okay, there's a flaw here, and I can manipulate that to my, I don't know, to my gain, and it worked.
No,
Like,
because
okay,
there's a
if you change the scenario right now, if you change the
Mhm.
scenario and it's like something mild, like I don't know, let's say you notice everybody, I don't know, summer like likes a certain flavor of, say, milkshake, and you decide to create a company based on that, and it pops off and like it benefits you. People are going to call you a genius because you saw a gap in the market, and then you manipulated it basically. Also,
again, that's your
manipulation would be
perception
another
from.
word.
So I think the difference between that and that is that unless you're purely targeting it to, you know, to attack, I say, lactose intolerant people,
Yeah.
it doesn't really work.
No, but
There's
that's the thing.
if you see
Yeah,
it as an
you
error in the
use it
system,
to attack
it's
lactose
not, because
intolerant
it's about
people, but
how you manipulate something. If you do it, like again, the study you talked about was Jane Elliott's. Like I said, I love her. She
right.
saw an issue in the system, yeah, and although it didn't make her president of the United States because she is American,
Yeah.
you know, it was that she got a lot of fame from it. She got a lot of infamy from it too, and a lot of backlash. But that's because people don't like to. It's like change is something that's hard to come by. A lot of people say they like change, and then really deep down, you know that they won't, because generally speaking, as
Creatures
humans, we're
habit,
born comfortable in ease, and change is a hard thing to accomplish, because it involves changing as such, which comfort and ease don't really go together hand in hand with change. If you find a fault in a system that needs to be that is something that's a weakness that you can prey on, don't prey on. Find a way to remove it. Better mankind for it. If you find it to exploit it for your own personal gains, then not only are you making it easier for others who wouldn't, where we're now in a society where at least things are supposed to be more accepting, more of, oh, humans here, but now you're increasing it, so you're increasing danger to those people, yeah, whether it's me or people that are like me, or whether it's people that aren't like me. You know, for instance, Brexit was purely about the Eastern Europeans more than anything, and I've never met one that, you know, that someone who's Eastern European that I don't get along with. You know,
yeah, but that's the thing. Even if you meet someone that you don't get along with, it
it's
shouldn't
still their
fucking
right to be
matter
here.
if
Yeah, it
humans
doesn't
are
matter
human.
if we don't get along, we won't get along. But
Yeah,
it's none of my business. You've got, as far as I'm concerned, if you was born on this planet, then you have a right to reside anywhere in this planet that you would like to, even if it's above a volcano. If you want to live above a volcano, you live above a volcano. I'm gonna tell you that it's dangerous, but if it's your choice to live there, it's your choice to live there.
yeah, but
Because I don't have any more right to tell you you can't live there than I think else. I don't
that's
think anyone else should.
kind of like what I was trying to like get at. Like when it comes to choice and like taking action, they
I
just
think it's
are.
different. I don't think you should purposely take any action that
No,
not just
obviously, there's
inconveniences
we have
others, but
morals that
attacks others.
you
I
like
could never.
basically should try to not do something that's gonna harm people. That's what that's how things should be. But then again, they don't have to. I'm not trying to go like, go commit
That's where
evil.
I don't award merit. Basically, exploiting a system
Mm.
that doesn't help or doesn't fix something that's wrong with it, that you can tell is wrong with it, which is why you're exploiting it,
Yeah,
is taking the easy way. It's like the coward's route. You know, it's like if somebody comes up to you and says they want to fight you tomorrow, you know, they want to fight you so that they can get to your family, yeah, or anything like that, and you go, well, the easy route is not to fight them. You can leave town, you know, you can leave town, and then you don't have to fight them. But then, you know, you've put others in danger because you've left. You know, there's also, if you exploit something, that's the difference between exploiting the system for personal gains or not. If the way that you exploit it is just to make things easier for yourself, you know, at the risk of jeopardizing things for other people, for no other reason than you want power or you want to attain this or that, and it's all about you. That's again when we was talking about how I think karma is more about perception. When you're about you, nothing will ever be enough. You know, rather than when you're against other people, it doesn't matter whether there's backlash, doesn't matter whether there's this or that. You know, it's like Mother Teresa. You know, she was seen as a saint, but as it turns out, she was probably killing more people than she was helping. And in fact, she was only helping people also on camera so that she'd get a lot of donations. She was a millionaire, you know, and she wasn't helping the people that she supposedly was, where she got off the table.
Like she was a millionaire, like being a millionaire is bad.
It is if you're supposed to be, if so. Basically, it's the whole thing of deception. If she became a millionaire through means of trying to become a millionaire, in the sense of that's why people are giving you the money, not to make you a millionaire as such, but because you're providing a service and you are providing that service, that's different. But if you're going to the world, oh yeah, look at me, I'm helping all these poor people, and it turns out that you're either killing them or leaving them in worse off positions and just essentially or helping them into human trafficking circles, but on the camera you're, oh no, look at me, I'm a saint,
yeah,
you know, then you're the worst kind of person. You know, I don't like deception. I'll say sometimes there's a difference between not telling the truth and lying. You know, sometimes you won't give someone the whole picture because the whole picture might maybe ruin a sale for you, and stuff like that. That's one thing, but purposefully deceiving people to get that thing, or exploiting a system that you know by exploiting it will put other people in jeopardy is completely different than exploiting a system that's not going to hurt anybody. You know, that's what I mean when it comes to, there's that video I sent you about this guy who talks about how he gets out of paying tax, which was different to how, you know, billionaires get out of paying tax. He worked the system, whereas also where the system as the system was, that's him doing that for himself.
You do know that the guy is a billionaire himself, right?
No, he's a multi-millionaire.
He's not a billionaire.
He's not a billionaire, no.
Right. Okay.
In fact, when I say he's a multi-millionaire, he's not a multi-millionaire. He's just a multi-millionaire in the sense of he has a lot of money. He has more money than he could probably deal with. But
multi would basically go from 2 upwards, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He's either high single digits or low double digits. He's not up there in the top 10 Forbes list or anything like that. But he does make enough where he can exploit that system for himself. He doesn't make enough where he's bribing MPs or Congress or anything like that to make it so that he has to pay less. That's the difference between exploiting something for yourself or purposely making it more difficult for other people. You know, making it difficult for other people is always the easiest way to go. You know, it's easy to exploit something and make it harder for others. That's something that's just, you know, it is always implicitly evil. It's like when you're playing a video game, you know, the good run's always harder because you can't just go around murdering everybody. You've got to find a way to beat them without killing them or incapacitating them. So the good run as such. But it's always the harder one because the powers are stronger when you get to kill people, you get more experience, you get more of this, you get more of that. Yeah, that's a video game. That also equates the same to real life in the sense of it's harder to do things when taking other people into consideration. You know, I could travel the world right now,
but I don't agree.
Like I want to travel the world right now. I want to travel the world, and I could easily travel the world right now. But to do that, I then have to, for a period of time, cut off essentially communication with my whole family, all my friends and stuff like that, just because. Okay, so I'd be able to afford to do what I wanted to do, but I wouldn't be able to be able to live a lifestyle where I could do that and bring them with me.
Wouldn't be the easy choice, though. Like if you took that action, it still wouldn't be the easy choice. Like
it would be the easier of trying to bring them with me.
Okay, but also like because like you then would have to cut all of these people off, maybe not communicate with them as much as you'd like to or you're supposed to. Like that's also a difficult choice. So like I see where you're going. That's the thing. Like what you're saying it will literally work perfectly in so many cases. There are also cases where it will fall apart. Like
Which
what I was
is,
trying to say was like action, the idea of just taking action,
mhm,
it's literally just what it is. Like, yeah, sometimes the consequences are negative. You maybe effing up a lot of people, where the other
mhm.
side would be you still took an action and it helped a lot of people, but the action in itself is still the action. So like
Yeah, but the
when
whole thing is it's the action behind. So essentially,
mm,
when I say it's easier, I mean you've said okay, sometimes it's not. So give me an example of when it's easier to help people than it is to help to.
can you like well for me it's
So
always going to be
if
to
you're
help.
saying it's sometimes easier to exploit something without hurting people than it is to hurt people, to exploiting something to hurt people. Give me an example of one situation where that is the case.
Let me think. Rephrase the question for me again, please.
So I've
Mm-hmm.
said that it's always easy to take the option where, to exploit a system where, for
Yeah.
instance, you've got a country that's full of xenophobic people
Mm-hmm.
because people are inherently scared of the unknown. And it's
Yeah.
easier to fan their flames and tell them they're right to be scared and
Yeah.
get them to vote for you because you'll do something about that imaginary fear than
Yeah.
it is to say, no, actually, your fears are unfounded. This is why. Let me provide you with this information, let you learn about these people, make it easier for us to communicate with them so that you can feel safe because you know more. And these people are good. Vote for me. I'll make changes.
Okay.
So that's what essentially I'm saying. It's easier to rile somebody's hate
Yeah.
and prey on their fear essentially to get what you
Mm-hmm.
want than
Okay.
it is to than it is to tell it is to help them help improve society by telling them that no, actually these are just people, or this is it's easier essentially to prey on someone's fears
Yeah.
and manipulate them in a sense on that basis than it is to actually help them improve in a lot of
Okay.
ways.
I
You know?
yeah. I guess you are right, but like okay, so the in the short term, I'd say I'll agree, but in the long term, I say no, because okay, let's say the people you've basically you taken advantage of their fear and you like confirm their fear like oh like these people are bad or whatever,
Yeah.
yeah, and then in the long run they like learn okay you were obviously a piece of shit, you're full of shit, you lied, these people are like lovely or whatever, and say what they wanted and at first was like okay shut everybody out, we don't want them, and then maybe later realize oh these people are not bad, they're actually like probably the backbone of our economy or whatever, and they decide to
Mhm.
let them in. So essentially, okay, yeah, in the short term, it was easier for you to basically manipulate them to get what you want. But in the end, when they realize that other people are like the opposite of what you said, and they let them in and say the economy in like literally gets better because it's like, okay, we have different people, they have different perspective of seeing things. They're probably bringing skills that or new ways of thinking that this sort of people didn't think about and then like literally boost the economy and stuff like that. it's
Mhm.
it kind of falls apart in the long run because it's just like in the short term, I completely 100%.
And basically, there's a lot of studies
Depending
that
on the
have been done
situation,
which
it
actually
might
shows
work in one cases and not in others.
no, in that even in that sense. So basically, for the period of that person's life, they'll get away with it. And here's the reason why. There's been a lot of studies that have been done based around human psychology. And what it shows is that a lot of people, even when presented with new contradicting information, will still believe their information, even if they've been shown that actually what you thought was wrong is actually correct. What you thought was wrong is correct, and what you thought was correct is wrong. They will still stick to their original opinion. It's hard for people to change their minds. A lot of changes throughout society have happened when the children grow up and when the children start to learn. But by that point, now that we're getting longer and longer lifespans and stuff like that, and in fact, they actually are starting to recede again, where they're stagnated and that starts to go down a little bit, due to why you could argue many points. But for the most part, and through most of history, and even to this day, to certain points, because it tends to be the older generations that keep power for the longest, because they're the ones with the most assets, they're the ones that have been able to keep their generational wealth for longer until eventually they pass away and pass that down to their kids. Changes don't tend to happen in one person's lifetime. Not drastic changes, not in perception or anything like that, because when presented with new information, people will stick to their guns 9 times out of 10. However, when the kids grow up, because kids always question, kids are inquisitive. The reason why the reason why slavery started to end and stuff like that was because the children of the slavers had started to see, well, actually, maybe these are just human beings. You know, you question how you grow up. You know, that's why you don't always get along. That's why I'm not your. That's why you get that I'm not one of your little friends, because sometimes you see something as one way and your parents see it as the other. You don't always see eye to eye, and that's just because you grew up differently. So, but your parents will see things for the majority the same way until the day they pass, even when presented with new information. I mean, I've had a few situations where the world we live in 2022, where it has to be more accepting. I've had to explain, well, actually, this is the scenario. Things, and they're not against anything or anything like that, but they what's it, sometimes they need to know more to understand, and sometimes I have those conversations with them about other things. But it's a case of, generally speaking, it's the younger generations that cause changes, because the younger generation grow up questioning why things are the way they are. So a lot of the things that you might get away with by people won't work on the younger generations, but the younger generations won't be dead.
Yeah.
And by that point,
that's concise. Yeah, we can end it there.
Okay. Well, that's it. This has been Therapy Sessions. Co-host Mal.
And I've been Oz. Thanks for tuning in.
We out.
Catch you next time.
Catch you next time.
Bye.